I always start with the same question, which is, how did you get involved in comedy? But first, feel free to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then how you got started in stand-up.
Okay. So hi, I'm Allison Summers, and I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and I am an improviser and a stand-up comedian. I make films as well.
Wow.
Uh, so uh, and yeah, I mean those are like the basic comedy things that I do. I have an animated series. I don't animate, but I write for it with my buddy Sam.
That's
So
cool. That's
yeah.
really, really cool. And how do you even get started in an animated series? Did he come up with the idea and you started writing it? Did you come up with it and find an artist? How does that even work?
So Sam is an animator and a writer, and we met at a film festival at this place called Third Coast Comedy Club in Nashville. And they were having like a film festival night, and I had written a sketch, like a comedy sketch, and we just started chatting. And our buddy Bill kind of connected us, and he was like, "Oh, you do voices and stuff," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm totally down to like." I'd seen one of his shorts at the film festival, and I was like, "This is funny," and so then we just started working together after that, and so we've been working together for like 3 years now. So
Wow. That's
yeah,
really cool. Now,
yeah.
you started in improv, right? And then you transitioned to stand-up, if I'm
So actually, I started writing sketch comedy first. So
wow.
I was in a sketch comedy group called Sketch Up at Maryland, at University of Maryland. So I started just writing sketch comedy that way. And then my buddy was like, when you, after graduation, I was going to move to LA. And he was like, he was living in Chicago at the time, and he was doing the second city in Chicago. And he's like, when you move to LA, you should do the second city in Chicago. I think you'll really like it. And then I moved to LA, and within 3 weeks, I like did the immersion program at Second City for improv, and then just got into the conservatory, and that was
Wow.
so in love with improvising.
So were you kind of going back and forth between LA and Chicago, or how was that working? Was it?
No, I never lived in Chicago. So I graduated college from the University of Maryland, and then I moved to Los Angeles. And then I studied improv in LA for like 6 years. I lived out there for 6 years,
Mhm.
and I did UCB, and
Yeah.
I did IO West. I only did like one class at IO West, but I performed at IO West a lot because they had cage matches, and they just had a lot of. IO West had like the most stage time, and that's where we would go after class to go and get fucked up because they had the bar.
Yep, yep,
So
yep.
we would, go hang out and then watch a show. So
Wow. Now, do you remember kind of like the moment or the time in your life where you thought like, oh, comedy might be for me? How does somebody decide to get involved in comedy?
I did theater as a kid. Like I did community theater in Old Hickory, Tennessee, at this little place called Lakewood Theater. So I remember watching a show being like 10, maybe, and being like, I really want to do this. So then I told my parents, I was like, I'd like to audition for a play. And then like I got it. And then I just started doing it. And so then I got, maybe when I was like 13 or 14, I got a role where I was sort of the comedic kid, I guess you would say. And then I remember I had to play like someone who wasn't like super smart, and I had to like pretend like I was playing the violin. And I remember being young, and it's probably because I've always been really skinny, so anything physical is funny when I do it, or funny looking, I should say. I just remember pretending to play the violin on stage, being little, and people laughing. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm funny. Like this looks fun. This looks funny. So then I just remember being like, performance in itself, I was attracted to as a kid, but then comedically, that's like the first moment that I remember, like, oh, okay, this, I can make people laugh.
Wow, that's really good. And so from there, did you decide, was there like a local theater that you studied at, or like how did you go from local theater, I make people laugh, to what you're doing now, which is like, from my perspective, you're like one of the most booked comedians in Nashville. Like, if that's what it looks like to me. How does one go from there to there? And what brought you back to Nashville?
Okay, I went to college with it. I got a theater degree. I went to college for theater. I just loved it. I didn't really give a shit about anything else. So I got a theater degree in Maryland, and then did this just as an extracurricular kind of thing. I just did the sketch comedy group and went to LA, and then I ended up, so I moved to Atlanta for a job. I got a promotion at my job at the time. And then I moved to Atlanta, still was just doing improv there. And then I moved to Nashville because I had to go to rehab. So I ended up coming to Nashville to go to rehab. And then I was like, I don't think I can like move back to Atlanta. Like, I don't think I want to be back in Atlanta. I just don't think it's like a good, because I grew up in Nashville. So it's like, I have like a whole support system here. And so I ended up moving to Nashville. And then I was like, there's no fucking comedy in Nashville. This is going to suck. So that was like I was like, if I stay in Atlanta, like there's at least comedy here. But I was like, my family. But I ended up finding this improv group called LOL Nashville, which is now part of Third Coast Comedy Club.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
And so I auditioned for that like 6 years ago, and then started doing improv because I was like, wow, this is actually an okay improv team in Nashville. And so I did improv with them for a long time, and then they opened a club. Luke Watson is in his name, and his partner. They opened up Third Coast Comedy Club, and they started having stand-up at the club. And I saw like an all-female stand-up show, and I never really watched stand-up ever, really.
Before I started, I never watched it.
I didn't even go see it in LA because improvisers never talk to stand-ups in LA. Like, that was like, no. There's like way too cool of a scene out there, I think. But so then I saw like an all-female show, and I was like, maybe I should try this. And then that was 4 years ago. And yeah, I mean, so that I just started doing it, not knowing what I was doing. I still don't know what I'm doing at all, which is like, okay, I guess this is just how it is. But yeah, and that was 4 years ago. And then I just started doing shows and going to open mics, and I travel a lot for my job. I have a job. But I travel a lot for work. So then every time, instead of like going out and getting fucked up, I would just go to these open mics in these other cities. And so I got to like see how other cities did it, and practice with less pressure. I feel it's less pressure out of state. I feel more pressure to be like good here in Nashville.
Like on your home turf, kind of.
Yeah, I respect a lot of the comics in the community here, and I feel, I just want the same level of, admiration, I guess, I don't know what you would call that, narcissism, probably just being human.
Right.
And just wanting to be, liked and a part of the community, honestly, because like if you're not really funny.
Right. You don't want to be the one everybody's like, well, she's sweet.
She's so nice. Yeah, she tells me there are a few of those.
There are. I mean, they show up and they sign up and they're so nice.
Like, yeah, they give me compliments all the time. Yeah.
Would you say, if you don't mind me asking, would you say that sobriety has changed your comedy, your style, your writing in any way, negatively or positively?
I don't remember what it was like to write not I probably did less. Well, I had writing partners out in LA. I would say yes, that it changed it in the sense of like that I'm more present. And we filmed a sketch show, a full length sketch show back in like March. And I would say that it's like kind of bizarre and like it's called The Darkest Hour. And so I would definitely say it's a little bit mm, less structured than, what am I trying to say? I would say, I guess it's a hard question because
Yeah.
I would say that being sober has allowed me to just do more
Yeah. Yeah.
and have more time to focus on things that I actually like. So, but as for joke writing, like I've already or doing stand up, I have been sober the whole time doing stand up.
Wow.
As an improviser, I was not sober for a long time.
Right.
And so that definitely has changed my improvising for sure. But like writing wise, comedy, I've been sober since I've been doing stand up.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. Would you have any advice, particularly for women and young girls who want to get involved in improv and stand up, that you wouldn't necessarily give to men, or maybe it's all the same advice, maybe for new beginners in your experience?
Yeah, I would say for anyone who wants to do improv, especially I mean, I guess it's, you are surrounded by men, um, but that's also, even like with my job that I do, it's kind of um, so I would say if you can work through trying to stay small, like don't try and stay small just because someone might not think that it's funny, or someone says that it's not funny. I would say trust your intuition. I've been fortunate enough in the improv world to have great friends that are men that have supported me and lifted me up and allowed me to be who I am. I've also dealt with men who have told me that I wasn't funny and who have said shit to me just to like get into my head. I've also dealt with women who do that. That's a constant thing. And so I would say try to stay focused on yourself and do not compare, which is really hard to do. But
Yes,
like
it's so
if
hard.
if there are things or exercises or anything that you can do to help to not compare, to understand that like just focus on the work at hand, and if it stops at some point bringing you joy, then it might be time to reevaluate like where are you putting your values, like if that makes sense, like
Yeah,
why
no,
are
that
you
makes
doing it.
perfect sense. Yeah, at the point where it no longer brings you the joy that it used to bring you. And I feel like there's a huge difference between it's hard versus it no longer brings me joy, right? Like
Yeah,
you always want to be like stretched and challenged and a little bit nervous and a little bit stressed out by it, because that's proof that you are, I feel like, associating with people who are better and booked more and more talented and whatever, and it'll force you to grow. But there's a big difference between that and I'm literally miserable doing this, or it's
yeah,
negatively impacting my life.
yes, and for me, trying to grow as a comic and not comparing myself, because I can get into that place where I'm like, well, they are way funnier than me.
Right.
How am I ever gonna, and then I have to kind of reevaluate and be like, that's like that. I'm glad, like I want to be a comic that is happy for others when they do well. And so
Yes.
it's, I need to reevaluate and be like, well, why am I doing this? Am I doing this? And then I'm like, oh, I'm doing this because I just like being on stage and I like being able to tell my story. I'm not doing this to be the best, or I'm not doing this. So I start to see that sometimes I can kind of go on that plane and like kind of veer off. I'm like, wait a minute, this is like my ego that's like just, oh, it's a little bit hurt.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of a lot to tell like a young person. So I would just say if you're like young, not that they couldn't handle all that, but it's like just do it, just try, just
Literally just
dare
start.
to fail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I love the way that you put that about being the comic who's happy for other comics. I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily think about that very much, but I do remember like the first time I was on social media and somebody I knew got something huge and my brain went, I'm so happy for them. Like I'm so excited for them, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I didn't get that. How did they do that? How do you even start? And I think it has a lot to do with, like you said, finding that support system and finding those people and making sure that you believe in yourself. Because if you believe the people who are like, you're not funny or you haven't been doing this long enough, that's my favorite one, is like, you're not a stand-up yet, like you haven't put in the reps or whatever. Then you're going to have that very much like FOMO. Everything is a competition. Everyone is a competition. Why are they getting things and you're not? As opposed to when you finally find your voice, when you finally find your people, when you finally find your scene, the schedule that works for you, right? Like maybe an open mic every night doesn't work for you. Then you find yourself being that person who can genuinely be happy for other people when they get things and still work towards what you know you will eventually get, even if you don't know what that is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I'm glad you put it that way. What would you say are the positives and the negatives of doing something like improv, and the positive and the negatives of doing something like stand up? Like, say for example, somebody's trying to decide which one to start with. What are the pros and cons of both if you had to choose?
So positives of it. Okay, if you want friends, if you need friends, start with improv.
There it
Okay.
is.
If you want friends, don't start with stand up.
No.
Uh, improv is super supportive. It's like a team sport, and you don't have to fucking write anything. You don't ever have to write anything down. You don't. It's never the same. Which is stand up is a lot of the same because you're crafting your jokes and you're reworking jokes and you're telling your jokes sometimes. I just featured at Comedy Bar in Chicago, and so I did my set, and I had 15 minutes, but I changed it up a little bit every night. But I did a lot of the same stuff like 7 times.
Yes.
And by the end of it, I was like, I don't think I'm funny.
I hate this.
But people were laughing, but I was like, God. So, I think the pros are, if you're a writer and you like to write, then maybe start with stand up. But stand up comedy to me is way more brutal.
Yes.
If you fail, which I have many times, you bomb, you feel it a lot. In improv, when you bomb, you feel it, but you're bombing with a bunch of people.
With friends.
And so it's okay. Now, getting your friends to come to an improv show as opposed to a comedy show, good luck with that.
Yeah, very difficult.
I don't want to see an improv show. And I do improv. So, so I think that there are pros and cons to both, but, improv is always going to be my number one thing, just because, I've been doing it for like 11 years.
Right.
And I teach it, and I love getting people excited about it, and I love seeing people fall in love with it, and they fall in love with each other. Like, yes. I have two people from my class last year at the beginning of the year that are getting married. They met in my class. They're getting married.
That's so cute.
Mm-hmm.
That is adorable. Yeah. That's got to make you feel good. Can you think of a recent time or an overall time that was like your proudest moment in comedy? Was there a certain gig or a certain thing somebody said to you that just was your pinnacle?
I will tell you, so this has happened twice recently, and it's something that I haven't ever experienced, where I have done crowd work, and the crowd has gone crazy. And I have never experienced this before. It happened once. Brad Sativa had me on his City Winery show. And then it happened at Comedy Bar in Chicago this weekend. And so where it was like 5 seconds. And that, to me, that's like a big deal, where people were laughing and howling and like screaming. And I was standing on stage almost like, I didn't think that that was that funny. Like, I know that sounds weird,
No, it makes perfect sense to me.
but I was just like, this is so cool and so weird that they think that this is so funny. So that is something that has been neat. And that's, it just is like very unexpected. And I don't know what that is. I wish that would happen a lot, all the time, but I just said, that's very new for me to experience that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember you were on the very first lineup I ever worked here in Nashville at Comedy Bar. You were hosting, and you were also the first comedian I met in person here. You were so nice. But would you say that you have ever gone through a period where you literally just like thought for sure you'd quit comedy? Like, have you ever had the opposite of that experience?
No, I haven't.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I I just really enjoy it, and I enjoy all facets of it. So maybe that's why, like, I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket,
Right.
because
Right.
I just, there's so many forms of the art. Like, even I find, there's a comedian in town. She draws, and her stuff is comedic, and I find that to be like a form
Oh,
of
of
comedy
course.
too.
Totally.
So I think that's really cool. So I think maybe the reason why I haven't wanted to quit is just because it's like there's just so many different outlets
Yeah.
for it. And I again, it's like where I place my values. Like, I don't plan on moving to New York or Atlanta or LA to like be I really want to create my own projects here in Nashville. It would be great to like get paid to do that, so I wouldn't have to do my day job. But I think that also helps me keep the pressure off, if that
Yes.
makes sense.
Yes.
So
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. Do you see yourself staying in Nashville long term?
I would say yes. I mean, I would love to. I love performing, and I think if I can continue to create sketch shows and create the things. I mean, it's a hard thing to say yes or no, but I definitely, like, I love it here. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
I,
I don't see myself moving anywhere anytime
yeah.
soon.
That's like the general consensus around here. Everyone I meet is like, I love it here. Yeah. I love it here.
Yeah, I really do like our comedy community. I think that I like performing in venues that aren't comedy centric.
Mhm.
I think that is, uh, I don't know. I find that probably because I grew up here, so performing in music venues and stuff is kind of fun for me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I don't have any desire to. I mean, I've lived in LA, in Atlanta, and that's great. I mean, that's all
Yeah.
good. But not to say, like, if somebody wants to hire me, I'll move for
Right.
you.
Right.
Adult Swim,
Right.
hire me.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm the same way. I'm like,
You need some ladies, Adult Swim. Have you seen your roster? Because I have.
to be honest, like I didn't even realize they still showed Adult Swim. It's been so long. I didn't even realize it was still on TV. I used to watch that every night. Yeah, I feel like all comics are the same way. We're like, I love it here, ride or die, support the scene. And then late nights like, hey, but what about us? And we're like, oh, see you later. I'll be back. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go right for this this paycheck that's calling me. Would you say that there are any common misconceptions that people often think about comedy or being a comedian that you want to debunk or agree with or prove true?
I would say I'm kind of shy in person.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a little socially, like, if I know you and I feel comfortable and I'm able to open up, but if I don't, it's very hard for me to like have okay, so that makes me feel good.
Yeah, stand up made me an introvert for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I would say that like a lot of times people will be like, "Oh, you're a stand-up comedian. You're probably really funny." I'm like, "I'm not funny. I want to talk about serious stuff. What's going on?"
Yeah.
You know, like so. I feel like for me to debunk is like, oh, I'm not. I mean, I think I'm funny sometimes off stage, but
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's from my perspective, what I've experienced is the marker of who's new to comedy and who's been in comedy for a while. The new comics are the ones that think, I've got to be on, I've got to be wacky, I've got to be like very, very social. And the comedians who have been doing it for a long time are like, I don't really want to talk right now. I just kind of want to be alone. If you could just leave me alone for a second, I'll talk to you later. Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I took somebody to a 4th of July party that was all comics in Chicago once, and he wasn't. He was just a plebe. And
Plebe.
yeah, a plebeian, like a regular person.
I never heard that.
Oh, I love that word, plebeian. Yeah. Yeah.
Plebe?
Yeah, it's from like Shakespeare, I think is the first time I ever heard it. It's like a normal person, or like a plebeian is like, but yeah, whenever I like get mad at somebody, I'll be like, oh, what a plebe, like what a plebeian. Or if I'm really mad, I'll call them a troglodyte. That's another really good one. I don't know if you've ever heard that one. Trog. Yeah.
That sounds
Yeah. That's the only way I put my English degree to work. That's it.
Is that what is troglodyte?
So a troglodyte is what you call somebody who is like next to caveman. Like all the drunkards out on Broadway, they're trogs. They're absolute troglodytes. Because they're just like knuckle draggers.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's a great insult, but usually if you call somebody a troglodyte, they don't know it, so they don't know how good that insult is because they're a troglodyte. So it's a little oh man, I totally forgot what I was. Oh yeah, so I took somebody to a party that was all comedians, and he was like, look around. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, everybody is so quiet and serious. He's like, this is a 4th of July party, and they're all having like little like conversations and very serious discussions everywhere. He's like, I thought I was going to come to this comedy party and people were going to be like throwing props around and like screaming. And I said, no. I said, we like expend it all on stage, and we expend it all like working on our craft and honing our craft and doing our best and trying to figure out like how to better ourselves constantly, that when we aren't on stage, we're just very docile people. I feel like just very chill, very like low key. Like it's cool. Like you don't need to be high energy all the time. Like you can chill out. It's fine. Yeah. Which I think is super common, I think. And I don't know if that's because comedy has chewed us up and spit us out, so we're just like laying in wait, or if I don't know why that is.
A lot of times I'm like tired from my set, or I'm like nerves too before. I'm like, but I'm trying to get out of that. I find now that if I'm more talkative, then I'm out way less in my head. So I'm actually trying to be a little bit more chatty. But the thing is, like, I don't know what to ask besides like basic small talk stuff. And I fucking hate small talk.
Yes. Especially when like you're having small talk with a person where you can tell both of you know that you're just having small talk for the sake of having small talk. Yeah.
That is a lot of, yes. Oh God.
I've tried to I've made it a point every time I'm on a show or at a show, I make a point to shake the hands of everybody on the show. Like that's my version of slowly becoming not an introvert, is I'm like, look at the lineup, who's all in the lineup, shake everybody's hand, say something to them, and then you've done your extrovert community service.
That's a lot more than a lot of people who run shows, not in Nashville. I haven't done that in Nashville, but that's a lot more than most do.
Right. It's very surprising at how many shows, especially in cities like Chicago, you as the comic have to kind of go find the person who booked you. You have to go up to them and be like, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm on your show, as opposed to them like, oh, hey, like coming over, shaking your hand, introducing themselves. I talked to somebody once who was a producer in Chicago, and he comes up to me and he's like, hey, do you mind if it was something like the lineup? And I was like, hey, man, just you tell me. I was like, you come up and you say, now you're number 2 or now you're number 3. I was like, you don't have to like apologize and ask people's permission. This is your show. We are here for you. It's like, so feel free to come up and just be like, hey, I'm putting you second now. And he
Right.
just looked so spooked by the idea. I remember that. Do you have any small or large goals for the future? Maybe like 1-year goals, 5-year goals, 10-year goals? Or do you have any, like, this would be so perfect if I got this kind of opportunity type thing?
We finished filming the sketch comedy show. So we start like really editing actually tomorrow.
Nice.
So my goal for that is I don't know if I'm going to submit it to film festivals or what, but I don't know what the best, I need to do some research and find out what is the best. Do I just put it up on YouTube? Whatever. I want to write sketch comedy. Like I think you should leave. I've always been a big sketch comedy fan, not so much a fan of SNL. I just didn't grow up watching that show.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up watching In Living Color. That was like what I wanted to, as a kid, I was like, I would like to be on this show. And so that's like a goal or like a dream is to have what I made with my 2 friends to get picked up. But that's like a huge goal. So then like realistic goals would be to put it in like San Francisco Sketch Fest and things like that. So and to continue to do more, to continue to do more shows, stand-up shows. I'd like to eventually do a recording, but not a long one, maybe like a 25-minute recording. But I also, a goal for writing is I write a lot about sex and dating. And I want to write more about my alcoholism. And I've been in a relationship, a long-term relationship for a long time now. So it's interesting, like, still do like single jokes, but I want to write more about my relationship, but sometimes like, I think my relationship's too healthy.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I'm like, which is a good thing. So
yeah, that's so real though.
Yeah. But I think, so maybe it's not just like write more about my relationship. I think I just want to expand more than just like sex and dating and general observations. I would like to get better at that, I think, and just expand.
Yeah.
I definitely want to have at least 10 new minutes by the end of the year, which I'm working on.
And have it more focused on like who you are right now and your experiences right now, as opposed to like the metaphorical, would be single life or past life.
Yes.
That's really cool. So where can we find your information? Where can we see you? What have you got coming up?
So you can find me on Allison Summers Insta on Instagram. So it's like ALLISONSUMMERSINSTI on Instagram. And then I am doing a show at Comedy Bar on Sunday night this weekend. You can find me a lot at Comedy Bar. Every Tuesday night, I host the Tomato Show at Comedy Bar in Nashville. And we've only done 2 so far, and it's been really fun. Like, it just feels like a good night. Yes. And the comics are throwing tomatoes at each other, but it's in like good fun.
Yes.
So you can find me there. I'm doing a show at the Crazy Horse, which is a strip club.
Yes. Is that the Sunday one? Is that like the Sunday midday?
Yeah. That's also a banger of a show, which I wasn't expecting. I did it last month, and I was like, this is really fun. And then I write with my buddy Sam. It's called Afternoon Stew. You can find that on Instagram. We do little cartoon shorts, and that's where you can find me now.
Awesome. Awesome.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. That was all the questions I had for you. I really appreciate you taking your time to answer questions for us. And I wish you the best of luck in your upcoming shows and endeavors.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this.
No problem. All right. Awesome. Well, that wraps us up. And so, yeah, thanks so much. Have a great evening and have a great summer in case I don't see you anytime soon.
Thanks, Cindy.
Bye.
Bye.